Hands out, freight trash. This stop ain't a charity lane. Deputy Faulkner ripped Trina Daniels's license from her fingers and flicked it onto the asphalt, heel grinding it down like something meant to be erased. Look at her, he barked to the circle forming fast. Big rig. No sense. Always hauling lies. Rusk laughed and yanked her arms back, metal cuffs clamping too tight, twisting until her shoulders screamed. A phone lifted behind them, recording. Search her, Rusk said. Bet she's dirty. Trina's boots stayed planted beside her semi, jaw locked, eyes empty. In her ear, the hidden comm thumped once, urgent. Faulkner leaned in, smug, unaware the woman held his fate. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The heat rippled off the asphalt as Trina Daniels pulled her black semi-truck into the rest stop. She'd been tracking this route for weeks now, watching the pattern of suspicious vehicles that passed through like clockwork. The air conditioning died as she cut the engine, and sweat immediately began to bead on her forehead. Climbing down from the cab, Trina's boots hit the cracked pavement with a solid thud. She adjusted her fitted black t-shirt and reached for the manifest clipboard tucked behind her seat. Years of tactical training had taught her to stay aware of her surroundings while appearing casual. She noted the few other trucks scattered across the lot, the tired families shuffling in and out of the rest stop building, the pair of local police cruisers parked in the shade. A quick glance at her watch confirmed it was 2:15 p.m. Right on schedule for her routine stop. She flipped through the manifest pages, mentally counting down the minutes until her target should appear. That's when she heard the boots approaching. Well, well, what do we have here? The voice dripped with false friendliness. Deputy Rusk swaggered toward her, thumbs hooked in his belt loops, a smirk plastered across his ruddy face. Don't see many lady truckers out here, especially not. He paused deliberately, looking her up and down. Trina kept her expression neutral. Afternoon, officer. Just checking my paperwork before heading out. A second set of footsteps approached from behind, slower, more measured. Deputy Faulkner emerged like a shadow, his cold eyes studying her with calculated intensity. This is a rest stop, not a parking lot, he drawled. How long you planning to loiter here? Not loitering, sir. Standard safety check, then I'll be on my way. Trina's tone remained professional, but she felt her muscles tensing. The way they had positioned themselves, Rusk in front, Faulkner circling behind, was textbook intimidation. Safety check, huh? Rusk snorted. Sure you ain't running something else out of this truck? Lot of unusual activity in these parts lately. A small crowd of travelers had started to gather, watching the scene unfold. Trina saw a teenage girl pull out her phone, recording. Good. My paperwork's in order, Trina said, holding out her commercial license. You're welcome to verify. Oh, we'll verify all right, Faulkner cut in, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it slightly as he snatched the license. Funny thing about paperwork, sometimes it lies. Just like people. Trina's training screamed at her to counter his hold, to take control of the situation. But she couldn't blow her cover. Not with so much at stake. She pressed her thumb against the tiny comm unit in her ear. 2 quick taps, their agreed-upon danger signal. Sir, you're hurting my wrist, she said loudly, making sure the gathering crowd could hear. I've shown you my license. There's no reason for... Shut your mouth, Rusk barked, his fake friendliness evaporating. Getting real tired of your attitude. Acting all high and mighty with that fancy truck. We know what kind of trash comes through here. More phones had appeared in the crowd. Faulkner's grip tightened painfully. Maybe we ought to do a full search, he suggested, voice silky with threat. See what you're really hauling. Unless you want to tell us now who you're working for? Trina's heart raced, but her face remained calm. They were fishing, trying to provoke her. Did they suspect something? Or was this just their normal abuse of power? Either way, she couldn't risk the operation. Months of work, dozens of potential victims' lives on the line. "I work for myself," she stated firmly. "I've done nothing wrong, and you have no probable cause for—" The movement was lightning fast. Faulkner yanked her arm behind her back, while Rusk stepped in close, blocking the crowd's view. "Resisting an officer," Faulkner announced loudly. "Always gotta make it difficult, don't you people?" Trina's cheek slammed against the hot metal of her truck as Faulkner roughly cuffed her hands behind her back. The steel bit into her wrists. She could take them both down. The positioning was perfect for a sweep and disarm. But the mission had to come first. Always the mission. That's when she heard it, the soft buzz in her ear, followed by words that made her blood run cold. "Abort the sting. You've been made. We're compromised." The cruiser's vinyl seats stuck to Trina's skin as she watched a drop of blood from her split lip fall onto the dark upholstery. Deputy Faulkner drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on his gun. A deliberate show of power. In the passenger seat, Deputy Rusk kept turning around to leer at her. "Bet you ain't so tough now, are you?" Rusk taunted, his face red with satisfaction. "All that attitude just got you a nice trip downtown." Trina remained silent, using the bumpy road as cover to slowly work her cuffed hands toward her ankle. She had a backup comm unit strapped there. If she could just activate it, the FBI would be able to track her location. The main unit in her ear had already been discovered and crushed under Faulkner's boot at the rest stop. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Faulkner's cold voice cut through the air. His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Whatever you're reaching for, stop. Now." Trina froze. Faulkner pulled the cruiser over sharply, gravel crunching under the tires. Before she could blink, he was at the back door, yanking it open. His hands were rough as he grabbed her ankle, finding the hidden device. "Well, what do we have here?" He examined the small black unit, then crushed it between his fingers. "You just don't learn, do you?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Try another smart-ass move like that, and you'll be leaving here in much worse shape than you arrived. Understood?" The threat hung in the air like smoke. Trina met his gaze steadily, but stayed silent. Faulkner's eyes were dead, the eyes of someone who enjoyed causing pain. Back on the road, Trina watched through the window as they passed the rest stop again. Her heart sank as she spotted a black transport truck pulling out, the very one she'd been monitoring for weeks. She knew what was inside. Young girls, stolen lives, headed for God knows where. All her careful surveillance, blown in an instant. At the station, they roughly marched her through a side entrance. The building was oddly quiet for mid-afternoon, with only a few deputies visible. They stopped at booking. "Name?" barked the desk sergeant, not looking up. "Keisha Lorne," Trina replied evenly, using her well-established alias. She'd been operating under this identity for months, with perfect documentation to back it up. Faulkner's eyes narrowed slightly. He stepped closer, studying her face. "Funny. You don't look like a Keisha to me." "That's what my mama named me," Trina shot back, letting a hint of defiance color her tone. "Play the role," she reminded herself. Just another angry civilian being harassed. "We'll see about that," Faulkner murmured. He nodded to Rusk. "Put her in holding." Alone. The holding cell was small and reeked of bleach. A single narrow window near the ceiling let in a shaft of dusty light. Rusk shoved her inside hard enough that she stumbled, catching herself against the metal bench. "Enjoy your stay, princess," he sneered, slamming the door with unnecessary force. Miles away, in an unmarked van serving as FBI Mobile Command, Agent Monroe paced the cramped space, running his hands through his gray hair in frustration. Multiple screens showed static, where there should have been tracking data. "What do you mean we've lost both signals?" he demanded. "The truck and Agent Daniels, both gone?" "Yes, sir," a young tech replied. "Agent Daniels's primary comm went dark at 1422. Backup unit activated briefly at 1445, but was also lost. The transport truck's tracker showed it heading east on I-70. Then, nothing." "Jesus Christ," Monroe muttered. Months of careful work, dozens of potential victims, all slipping away. And now one of his best agents was in the wind. A junior agent burst into the van, tablet in hand. "Sir, you need to see this. It's going viral." The shaky phone footage showed Trina being roughly handled by the deputies, their racist comments clearly audible. The teenager who'd filmed it had posted it with the caption, "Cops harass black female trucker for no reason. Spread this!" Back at the station, Faulkner methodically searched through Trina's confiscated belongings. His movements were unhurried, practiced. When he got to her socks, his fingers found something hard. He pulled out a slim black phone, different from the basic burner they'd already logged into evidence. Turning it on, his face hardened as he saw the encrypted screen, satellite uplink active. The wallpaper was the FBI seal. Without a word, he walked to the front of the station and quietly locked the main doors. No one in, no one out. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the holding cell window as Trina sat perfectly still, mentally mapping the building's layout, counting guard rotations, noting every detail. Her training hadn't failed her yet. She just had to stay alive long enough to use it. The evidence room's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Faulkner circled Trina like a shark. She sat handcuffed to a metal chair, her dark skin glistening with sweat in the stuffy room. He held up her two confiscated devices, turning them over in his hands with exaggerated care. "You know what I think?" Faulkner's voice was soft, dangerous. "I think you're not some truck driver at all." He leaned in close, his breath hot against her face. "I think you're a fed bitch who stuck her nose where it doesn't belong." Trina kept her expression blank, staring straight ahead. Her split lip throbbed, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her pain. "Nothing to say?" He slammed both devices onto the metal table, making her flinch despite herself. "That's fine. I made some calls. Just waiting to hear back about what to do with you." He pulled out his phone, dialing a number while maintaining eye contact with her. "Yeah, it's me. Got something you need to know about." He stepped just outside the door, but his voice carried clearly. "Found FBI gear on her." "No, nobody knows she's here. What do you want me to do with her?" Trina's ears strained to hear the response, but the voice on the other end was too muffled. Faulkner's face darkened as he listened. Meanwhile, in the dispatch room, Officer Miguel Diaz pretended to file paperwork while watching the scene unfold through the glass partition. His hands shook slightly as he watched Faulkner return to the evidence room. This wasn't right. None of this was right. Faulkner stalked over to the room's thermostat, cranking it up. "Gets mighty hot in here without AC," he drawled. "Especially in summer. Especially when the ventilation's bad." He flicked off the lights, leaving only the dim glow from the hallway. "And it's amazing how many equipment malfunctions we have. Cameras, air conditioning, lights. Anything could happen, and nobody would know." Sweat rolled down Trina's back, but she kept her breathing steady. She'd endured worse in ranger training. The darkness didn't scare her. It was an advantage if she could get free. Down the hall, Deputy Rusk sat at a computer terminal, methodically deleting security footage. His pudgy fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, erasing every trace of their encounter with Trina at the rest stop. He'd done this before. Agent Monroe's voice crackled through the precinct's main phone line for the third time in an hour. "This is Senior FBI Agent Monroe. I need to speak with your commanding officer immediately." The desk sergeant's response was rehearsed. "Sorry, sir. Sheriff's out of town. Can't help you. This is a federal matter. Click. The line went dead. Back in the evidence room, Faulkner pulled up a chair, sitting backwards on it to face Trina. You know what happens to people who threaten our operation? He pulled out his knife, using it to clean under his fingernails. They tend to disappear. Lots of deep woods around here. Lots of hungry animals. Trina's muscles tensed imperceptibly. She'd mapped 4 possible exits, noted the weak point in her handcuffs, counted the steps to the door. She just needed the right moment. Officer Diaz walked past the evidence room for the 3rd time, his conscience eating at him. Through the door's window, he saw Faulkner press his knife against Trina's throat. Diaz's hand instinctively moved to his phone, then dropped away. Who could he even call? The whole department was corrupt. Still nothing to say? Faulkner pressed the flat of the blade harder, leaving a white line across her dark skin. No FBI buddies coming to save you? No backup team about to burst in? Trina met his gaze steadily, her silence more powerful than any words. She could smell the fear beneath his bravado, the desperate smell of a man who knew his time was running out. Faulkner stood abruptly, shoving the chair away. He paced the room like a caged animal, growing more agitated by her continued silence. You think you're tough? You think you can wait us out? He grabbed her jaw roughly. Nobody knows you're here. Nobody's coming for you. And by tomorrow, nobody will even remember you existed. Rusk appeared in the doorway, his face shiny with nervous sweat. All the footage is gone. Clean as it gets. Good. Faulkner released Trina's face, wiping his hand on his uniform, as if touching her had dirtied it. Get the van ready. We move her tonight. The room grew darker as the sun set outside, shadows creeping across the floor like spilled ink. Trina's lip had split open again, drops of blood falling steadily onto the concrete. The metallic smell mixed with the musty evidence room air. Faulkner leaned down, his lips almost touching her ear. You're not getting out of this town. You know too much. His whisper was barely audible as he straightened up and walked to the door. The lock clicked behind him with grim finality, leaving Trina alone in the darkness as her blood continued to drip onto the cold floor. The moonlight cast long shadows through the precinct windows as Officer Miguel Diaz stood outside the evidence room, his hand hovering over the door handle. Inside, he heard Trina cough, a wet, painful sound that made his stomach twist. The night shift was quiet. Only the hum of fluorescent lights and distant radio chatter broke the silence. His fingers trembled as he inserted the USB drive into his laptop. The backup server required his login credentials, standard procedure that nobody ever bothered to check. Within minutes, he had the footage from the rest stop incident copying over. Each second that ticked by felt like an eternity. Come on, he whispered, glancing nervously down the empty hallway. The progress bar crept forward with agonizing slowness. Another cough from inside the room. Diaz grabbed the water bottle and first aid kit he'd hidden in his jacket. The lock clicked softly as he used his key, slipping inside before anyone could spot him. Trina sat exactly where Faulkner had left her, still handcuffed to the chair. Her lip had swollen, dried blood caking her chin. In the dim light, her eyes tracked his movement with sharp awareness that belied her battered appearance. Here, Diaz whispered, unscrewing the water bottle. Drink this. Please. She studied him for a long moment before accepting, letting him hold the bottle to her lips. She drank deeply, some water spilling down her chin. I know you're not just some truck driver, Diaz said quietly, setting down the first aid kit. The way Faulkner's acting, something's wrong here, really wrong. Trina swallowed hard, her voice raspy. If you don't get help soon, people are going to die. Her eyes bore into his. Children, in that black transport truck that left the rest stop. You understand what I'm saying? Diaz's hands shook as he opened the first aid kit. I copied the arrest footage before Rusk could get to all of it. But I don't know who to trust. The whole department. Call this number, Trina whispered, reciting digits. Ask for Monroe. Tell him exactly where I am and that Faulkner's involved directly. He'll understand. Outside in the parking lot, car doors slammed. Diaz peered through the window to see Faulkner striding toward the tree line behind the station, his uniform replaced by dark civilian clothes. 3 men waited in the shadows, their faces obscured by ski masks despite the summer heat. Jesus, Diaz breathed, ducking down. He watched as Faulkner pulled an envelope from his jacket, handing it to the tallest masked figure. Their voices carried faintly through the night air. FBI agent. Needs to disappear. Faulkner's words drifted in fragments. No traces. Cash changed hands. The masked men nodded and melted back into the darkness. Faulkner stood watching them go, then checked his phone and smiled. Miles away, in an unmarked surveillance van, Agent Monroe stared at his monitor in growing horror. The tracking signal from Trina's backup phone had just flatlined. Not just blocked, but completely dead. He tried triangulating her primary comm unit again. Nothing. Something's wrong, he muttered, grabbing his keys. Call the state police. I want backup at that station now. His team scrambled to comply, but Monroe knew they were too far away. Whatever was happening at that precinct, Trina was on her own. Back in the evidence room, Diaz helped clean Trina's split lip with antiseptic wipes. I'll make that call as soon as my shift ends. 2 hours. Just hang on. Earlier is better, Trina said. But I've got my own plans. She nodded toward the water bottle he'd brought. Leave that when you go. Diaz frowned but didn't ask questions. He packed up the first aid kit and moved to the door. I'll keep watch. Try to buy you some time. As soon as he left, Trina went to work. Her fingers, though numb from the tight cuffs, managed to grip the metal bottle cap. The vent cover above her was old, its screws loose from years of vibration. One by one, she began working them free. Outside, Diaz paced the hallway, his police radio crackling with routine traffic stops and domestic disturbance calls. Every footstep made him jump. Every shadow could be Faulkner returning. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket. He checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. The night stretched endlessly ahead as the sound of metal scraping against metal whispered through the evidence room door. From his post, Diaz could see straight down the main hallway to the booking area. Deputy Rusk sat at the desk, playing games on his phone, obviously bored with night shift duty. The security cameras in the corner blinked their red lights steadily, except for the one pointing at the evidence room. That light was dark. Through the window, Diaz watched Trina work methodically at the vent, her movements precise despite her restraints. The metal cap spun against the screws with quiet determination. One screw clattered to the floor, then another. She caught them before they could make noise. The radio squawked, "Unit 4, respond to possible 1054 at Miller's Creek." Rusk's voice came back. "Copy that, en route." The front door slammed as Rusk left, leaving the station even emptier. Somewhere in the building, a phone started ringing. It went unanswered. The vent cover creaked softly as another screw came loose under Trina's relentless work. Diaz checked his watch again. 11:52 p.m. The night crawled by like molasses as he stood guard, every minute feeling like an hour, while behind him the sounds of Trina's escape attempt continued with quiet persistence. The darkness pressed in around Trina as she squeezed her aching body through the narrow vent shaft. Years of dust coated her clothes, and every movement sent shooting pains through her bruised ribs. The basement archives stretched below her like a maze of shadowy shelves and forgotten files. With practiced silence, she lowered herself down, landing in a crouch between 2 tall filing cabinets. The musty smell of old paper and damp concrete filled her lungs. Her training kicked in. Assess, adapt, survive. First priority. Get oriented. Pale emergency lights cast a sickly glow through the underground space. Row after row of metal shelving units created a grid pattern that stretched into the darkness. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, each drop echoing off the concrete walls. "Security panel has to be down here somewhere," she whispered to herself, keeping her voice low enough that it wouldn't carry. Moving carefully despite her injuries, Trina crept along the walls, scanning for electrical fixtures. Her fingers traced along rough concrete until they found what she was looking for. A utility access panel hidden behind a stack of moldy cardboard boxes. The panel's lock was simple enough. She pulled a bobby pin from her hair and had it open in seconds. Inside, a maze of wires and circuit breakers presented itself. Trina smiled grimly. This was the station's central nervous system. She traced the security circuits, found the one she needed, and carefully redirected power from the camera feeds. Now she just had to find the armory before anyone noticed. The basement layout was fairly standard for a small-town precinct. Trina moved deeper into the shadows, past shelves crammed with evidence boxes and case files yellowed with age. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold floor. They'd taken her boots during processing. The armory door stood at the end of a short hallway, its heavy metal frame a stark contrast to the crumbling walls around it. Another lock, this one more sophisticated. It took her nearly 2 minutes to defeat it. "Seriously," she breathed as the door swung open. The weapon racks were almost completely bare, just empty hooks and dust where rifles and shotguns should have been. Faulkner had clearly been planning ahead. But there, in a forgotten corner under some old riot gear, she found it. A battered X-26 taser, probably considered too old for service, but still functional. The charge indicator showed green when she tested it. Better than nothing. A bank of old security monitors caught her eye, pushed against the back wall. Most were dark, but 3 still displayed grainy feeds from external cameras. Trina's pulse quickened as she noticed the timestamp on the footage. Just a few hours old. She rewound the feed, scanning backwards until she found what she needed. The black transport truck appeared on screen, turning east out of the rest stop. She followed its progress across multiple camera views until it turned onto Route 16, heading straight for the abandoned Midwest Meats processing plant. "Got you," she whispered, memorizing the route. That facility had been shut down years ago after health code violations. Perfect cover for trafficking operations. Suddenly, heavy footsteps pounded overhead. A door slammed, followed by shouting. Trina's muscles tensed as Faulkner's voice carried through the ceiling. "She's loose in the building. Lock it down, now." Radio static crackled. Then Rusk's excited reply. "Copy that. All units converge on the station. Suspect is considered dangerous." Trina moved fast, plotting her escape route. The basement had to have an emergency exit. She found it behind a row of filing cabinets. A metal door with a push bar, probably rusted shut from disuse. More footsteps above, running now. Flashlight beams swept the stairwell leading down to the archives. Time was up. Her fingers found the keypad lock beside the emergency door. 4 digits. Standard building code would use the station's founding date. She punched in 1958, and the lock clicked open. Shouts echoed from the stairwell. "Check the basement! She has to be down here!" Trina gripped the taser tightly and took a deep breath. The door would trigger an alarm. But that didn't matter now. She could hear Rusk's heavy breathing as he descended the stairs. Outside, crickets chirped in the pre-dawn darkness. 100 yards of open ground separated the station from the tree line. Red and blue lights began strobing in the distance as backup units responded to the call. Meanwhile, on a lonely stretch of county road, Agent Monroe's sedan crawled to a stop behind what appeared to be a drunk driver weaving across both lanes. Standard procedure would be to call it in, but something felt off. The driver's movements were too deliberate, too calculated. Monroe reached for his radio, but before he could key the mic, headlights blazed to life in his rearview mirror. A truck roared out of the darkness, engines screaming. His last thought was that he should have waited for backup. Back at the station, Trina pressed her shoulder against the emergency exit. The metal groaned in protest, decades of rust fighting against her. Behind her, flashlight beams danced across the walls as officers searched the basement room by room. "Where are you, you sneaky bitch?" Rusk's voice echoed off the concrete. "Come out, and maybe we won't have to hurt you too bad." Trina threw her full weight against the door. It burst open with a shriek of tortured metal, triggering alarms throughout the building. Cold night air rushed in as she stumbled out into the darkness. Sirens wailed to life, painting the world in alternating red and blue. Dogs barked in the distance. The woods beckoned, offering cover less than 100 yards away, but her injuries slowed her down. Each step sent fire through her ribs and bare feet. "There! By the emergency exit!" someone shouted. Flashlight beams swept toward her as she ran. Taser clutched tightly in her bloody fingers. The pre-dawn mist clung to the ground as Trina moved through the dense pine forest, each step calculated and precise despite her injuries. Blood had soaked through her black t-shirt, where Faulkner's questioning had reopened a wound in her side. The fabric was sticky and warm against her skin. She paused behind a thick tree trunk, listening intently. Distant sirens still wailed back at the station, but out here, only the earliest bird song broke the silence. Her bare feet were cut and bruised from running across rough terrain, leaving a trail she needed to hide. Fast. Trina dropped to one knee beside a fallen log, scooping up handfuls of dark mud. The cool earth felt good against her burning skin as she methodically covered her arms and legs, breaking up her silhouette. She lifted her shirt carefully and packed mud against the bleeding wound, gritting her teeth at the sting. It wasn't sterile, but it would help slow the blood loss until she reached her cache. "Just like Rangers training," she muttered, remembering similar exercises in Georgia's swamps. Use the terrain. Become invisible. She moved in careful bounds between covered positions, counting her steps. 5 miles to her emergency cache. 4 hours until full daylight. The odds weren't great, but she'd survived worse. Back at the station, Faulkner paced in front of 6 deputies equipped with tactical gear and K-9 units. His voice was cold and precise as he briefed them. "Subject is armed and extremely dangerous," he barked. "She's already attacked officers and destroyed evidence. Shoot on sight, but make it clean. Self-defense only." He shared a meaningful look with his most trusted men. Rusk hung back in Faulkner's office, typing quickly on a computer. The screen showed a suicide note, carefully worded to paint Trina as unstable and delusional. "Boss, got the note ready," he called out. "Says she was hearing voices, got paranoid about trafficking conspiracies. Real textbook stuff." Meanwhile, Officer Diaz sat alone in the dispatch room, replaying the last voicemail from Agent Monroe. Hidden in the standard check-in message was a code. 3 seemingly casual words that made Diaz's blood run cold. Sunshine, breakfast, red. The FBI emergency signal for "Officer down," internal threat. In the woods, Trina moved steadily northeast, using the rising sun to maintain her bearing. She kept to the deepest shadows, freezing in place whenever branches cracked in the distance. The sound of dogs barking carried on the morning air, still far away, but getting closer. Her vision swam occasionally from blood loss and exhaustion, but she forced herself to focus. The cache was close now. She'd chosen this spot carefully 3 months ago when setting up her cover, a decrepit farm storage container that looked abandoned, hidden in a grove of old oaks. After another 30 minutes of careful movement, she spotted it through the trees. The container's rusty exterior blended perfectly with the surrounding brown foliage. Trina did a full perimeter check before approaching, looking for signs of disturbance. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The lock's combination hadn't been touched. She spun the numbers quickly. 8 to 4, 7 to 2. The door creaked open just enough for her to slip inside. Cool darkness enveloped her as she felt her way to the battery-powered lamp. Soft light illuminated the container's interior. A Spartan but well-equipped safe house. Medical supplies, weapons, communications gear, and survival equipment lined the metal walls in neat rows. Trina didn't waste time. She stripped off her mud-caked shirt and cleaned the wound properly, using antiseptic that made her hiss through clenched teeth. The cut needed stitches. She'd done this before, but it never got easier. Her hands remained steady as she sewed the gash closed, mentally reciting old military cadences to stay focused through the pain. With the wound handled, she moved quickly through her gear checklist. A fresh tactical outfit replaced her bloody clothes. Her backup Glock 19 felt reassuring in its holster. She clipped her spare FBI credentials inside a hidden pocket and powered up a burner phone. The field map showed her position relative to the meatpacking plant, a straight shot east once she got through the woods. In the distance, dogs bayed excitedly. The search teams were spreading out, working in a standard grid pattern. They'd reach this area within hours. Officer Diaz paced nervously in the evidence room, Monroe's message playing over in his mind. He'd tried calling the agent's phone repeatedly, straight to voicemail every time. The tracking system showed Monroe's last known location on County Road 23, but the signal had gone dark hours ago. This was bigger than a simple arrest gone wrong. People were dying. Faulkner's voice crackled over the radio. Team 2, push northeast along the creek bed. Team 3, set up containment along the highway. She's out here somewhere. Rusk joined the search, eager for action. Hey, boss, what about that FBI guy? The one who kept calling? Taken care of, Faulkner replied flatly. Focus on finding her before she reaches civilization. In the container, Trina finished gathering her essential gear. Everything else would have to be abandoned. She reached into a hidden compartment and removed a weathered photograph, handling it with unusual gentleness. The image showed a young girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile, standing proudly next to a science fair project. Emily Martinez, age 13. Last seen at a rest stop just like the one where Trina had been arrested. That case had brought her here, chasing leads that pointed to a trafficking network protected by corrupt law enforcement. Trina's jaw tightened as she looked at Emily's innocent face. The girl would be 16 now, if she was still alive. All the evidence suggested this region was a major hub for the traffickers, and Faulkner was clearly their enforcer. Her expression hardened as she tucked the photo into her vest pocket. Every moment she wasted, that transport truck got further away with its human cargo. She checked her watch. 5:47 a.m. Time to move. The fluorescent lights flickered inside the empty gas station as Trina worked quickly at the manager's computer. Her stolen police credentials had gotten her through the back door, and her signal jammer ensured no alarms would reach dispatch. The morning sun streamed through dirty windows, casting long shadows across the empty aisles. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing the regional security network. Years of FBI cybersecurity training had taught her how to navigate these systems blindfolded. The screen filled with camera feeds from every major intersection and business along Highway 15. "Come on, where are you?" she muttered, scanning through hours of footage. Her side throbbed where she'd stitched herself up, but she pushed the pain aside. A flash of black caught her eye. There, the transport truck, exactly as she remembered it. No plates, heavily tinted windows, custom exhaust stack. She tracked its movement through multiple cameras, watching it turn east onto County Road 86 before disappearing into an industrial zone. The meatpacking plant stood out immediately. Officially closed for 3 years, but satellite imagery showed recent tire tracks and power usage. Perfect cover for trafficking operations, remote location, soundproof walls, cold storage units. Her jaw clenched as she thought about what might be happening inside. Trina pulled out her burner phone and dialed the FBI's secure line. 3 rings, then a click. "This is Agent Daniels. Authentication code Sierra 947. I need immediate backup at—" The line crackled with static. A distorted voice cut in. "Sorry, Agent Daniels. Line's been temporarily disconnected." Her blood ran cold. She recognized that voice. Deputy Rusk. Someone at the Bureau was feeding them information. Her own agency had been compromised. Back at the sheriff's station, Officer Diaz stood in the doorway of Rusk's office, holding a printout of the fake suicide note. "This is wrong," Diaz said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We both know she didn't write this." Rusk's face darkened as he stood up from his desk. "You need to learn when to shut your mouth, rookie. I'm calling internal affairs. This whole department needs—" Rusk's fist connected with Diaz's stomach before he could finish. The younger officer doubled over as Rusk grabbed him by the collar. "You ain't calling nobody," Rusk snarled, dragging Diaz down the hallway. They reached a storage room filled with old files and equipment. "Take some time to think about your career choices." The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Diaz pounded on the metal surface, but the soundproofed room swallowed his shouts. Miles away, at an isolated stretch of highway, Deputy Faulkner stood over the body of the transport truck's driver. The man had outlived his usefulness. Loose ends needed tying up. Faulkner wiped his knife clean and took the keys from the dead man's pocket. The truck's cargo was secure in the meatpacking plant's cold storage. 7 girls, all under 15, drugged and ready for processing. The buyers were already lined up, money transferred through offshore accounts. Everything was falling into place, except for one loose end named Trina Daniels. Back at the gas station, Trina accessed a different system, the surveillance drone network used by local news stations. She'd borrowed the login credentials during her initial undercover work. The drones provided real-time aerial coverage of major roads and infrastructure. She guided one of the drones toward the meatpacking plant, keeping it high enough to avoid detection. The thermal imaging showed multiple heat signatures inside the building, small clusters that didn't move like adults. Her stomach turned. A black SUV appeared on the feed, driving up the plant's access road. The vehicle stopped, and a familiar figure stepped out. Deputy Faulkner, still in uniform, carrying a briefcase. He walked with the confidence of someone who owned the place. Because he did. Trina zoomed the camera in, recording everything. Faulkner unlocked the main entrance and disappeared inside. Minutes later, lights came on in the administrative section. Through the windows, she could see him laying out papers on a desk, making calls, running his operation like any other business. "Got you," she whispered, saving the footage to a secure cloud server. This wasn't just a corrupt cop taking bribes or providing protection. Faulkner was the mastermind, using his badge and department resources to run a sophisticated trafficking ring. The security cameras showed more vehicles arriving, expensive cars with tinted windows, buyers coming to inspect the merchandise. Trina's hands shook with rage as she watched men in suits being escorted inside by armed guards. She checked her weapons and ammunition one last time. The Glock felt heavy against her hip, loaded with hollow points. A backup piece was strapped to her ankle. In her vest pocket, Emily Martinez's photo seemed to burn against her chest, a reminder of what happened when these monsters went unchecked. The signal jammer beeped, warning her that police frequencies were active nearby. Search teams were sweeping this area now, working their way systematically from the station. She'd stayed in one place too long. Trina wiped the computer's logs and gathered her gear. Through the gas station windows, she could see dust kicked up by approaching vehicles. Time to disappear again. But now she had what she needed: proof of Faulkner's operation and its location. The drone feed continued streaming to her phone as she slipped out the back door. On the screen, another black SUV pulled up to the plant. More suits, more guards, more lives being destroyed while the world looked away. The diesel engine rumbled as Trina guided her semi-truck down the empty industrial road. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement, and the meat-packing plant's rusty sign creaked in the wind. Her truck, once just cover for surveillance, now served a different purpose. She'd reinforced the front bumper with steel plates and filled the trailer with tactical gear. Parked in a secluded spot half a mile from the plant, Trina methodically prepared her equipment. The bulletproof vest felt familiar against her skin as she secured the straps. Memories of her Army Ranger days flooding back. She checked each smoke grenade twice, arranging them on her belt for quick access. The suppressed Glock slid smoothly into her thigh holster. "This ends today," she whispered, touching Emily Martinez's photo one last time before tucking it away. Her mind drifted back to 3 months ago, when the operation first started. The FBI had solid intel about girls disappearing along I-70, but every time they got close, the traffickers seemed to vanish. Now she knew why. The memory made her blood boil. "The transport will hit the rest stop at 0200, Agent Monroe had said, pointing at the map in their mobile command center. "We'll have teams here, here, and here." But the truck never showed. Instead, state troopers flooded the area, forcing their surveillance teams to pull back. The same pattern repeated for weeks, their targets always one step ahead. "Someone's feeding them information," Trina had insisted. "We need to go dark, run this off books." Monroe agreed, and they set up the trucker cover story. But even that had been compromised. The mole ran deeper than they'd imagined, all the way to the FBI's regional office. Every move they made, Faulkner knew about it first. Inside the meat-packing plant, screams echoed through the cold storage area. Faulkner stood over a teenage girl, maybe 14, who'd tried climbing through a ventilation shaft. Her lip was split, eye swollen shut. "You think you can just walk away?" he snarled, grabbing her hair. "After what I paid for you?" The girl whimpered as he dragged her back to the holding area. Other girls pressed themselves against the walls of their cells, trying to become invisible. Faulkner's phone buzzed, another buyer wanting to inspect the merchandise. Back in her truck, Trina set up her laptop and connected to a secure satellite uplink. The camera's red light blinked on, recording her face in the dim cabin. "My name is Special Agent Trina Daniels, FBI Undercover Operations," she began, her voice steady. "What I'm about to show you documents a human trafficking operation run by Deputy Clyde Faulkner of the Missouri State Sheriff's Department." She uploaded everything: drone footage, financial records, surveillance photos, arrest reports showing patterns of missing girls, names, dates, locations, all of it backed up with hard evidence. Faulkner uses his position to protect traffickers, targeting vulnerable girls and women across 5 states. He's murdered at least one federal agent and countless victims. This isn't just corruption. It's systematic evil hiding behind a badge. Her finger hovered over the send button. The files would go to every major news outlet, social media platform, and law enforcement agency simultaneously. No one could bury this. To Deputy Faulkner, she continued, staring directly into the camera, "I'm coming for you. No more hiding. No more victims. Tonight, you answer for everything." She hit send. Multiple progress bars filled her screen as the files uploaded. Within minutes, notifications started popping up. Downloads, views, shares. The truth was out, spreading faster than anyone could stop it. Trina checked her watch. The sun had almost set, painting the sky blood red. Through her binoculars, she counted 4 guards patrolling the plant's perimeter. Armed but sloppy, more used to intimidating teenage girls than facing actual resistance. She started the engine, feeling its powerful vibration. The reinforced bumper could easily take down the front gate. Smoke grenades would provide cover while she breached the building. Years of tactical training had prepared her for this moment. Her radio crackled with police chatter. They'd found her message. Faulkner's voice cut through the static, ordering all units to the plant. But it would take them at least 15 minutes to arrive. More than enough time. The truck's headlights cut through the gathering darkness as Trina accelerated down the access road. The guard at the gate barely had time to raise his weapon before 3 tons of steel slammed through the barrier. Metal screamed against metal as the gate crumpled under her bumper. Trina was already moving, pulling pins from smoke grenades as she leapt from the cab. The devices arced through the air, spreading thick white clouds across the loading dock. Confused shouts and gunfire erupted from multiple directions, but the bullets hit nothing but smoke. Her suppressed Glock made hardly a sound as she dropped the first guard. The second went down before he could radio for help. Through her tactical goggles, heat signatures showed the remaining guards clustering near the main entrance, exactly where she wanted them. More smoke grenades rolled across the concrete, creating a wall of cover. Trina moved like a shadow through the chaos, weapon raised, closing in on the building's entrance. Inside, she could hear Faulkner shouting orders, trying to regain control of a situation that had already spiraled beyond his grasp. This was the moment everything changed. No more running, no more hiding. The time for justice had finally come. The metallic stench of rust and decay filled Trina's nostrils as she moved through the smoke-filled corridors. Water dripped from exposed pipes overhead, creating an eerie percussion that mixed with distant shouts and running footsteps. Her tactical goggles revealed heat signatures moving frantically through the building. 2 guards appeared at the end of the hallway, their rifles sweeping back and forth through the smoke. Trina pressed herself against a corroded wall, controlling her breathing. The first guard passed within inches of her position. She struck like a viper. Her hand clamped over his mouth, while her other arm locked around his throat in a rear naked choke. He thrashed, but her grip was iron. Within seconds, he slumped unconscious. She lowered him silently to the floor. "Joey? You see something?" The second guard called out, moving closer. Trina waited until he was just past her before stepping out. He spun, raising his weapon, but she was already inside his guard. Her palm strike crushed his nose. As he staggered, she grabbed his rifle barrel, twisting it away while driving her knee into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping. A precise strike to the base of his skull put him down. Screams echoed from somewhere ahead. Trina moved faster, checking corners as she advanced. The corridor opened into a processing area filled with rusty hooks and ancient machinery. A third guard stood there, holding a terrified teenage girl in front of him like a shield. His pistol pressed against her temple. "Stop right there!" he shouted. "One more step, and I'll kill her." The girl sobbed, trembling in his grip. Trina raised her hands slowly, appearing to surrender. "Let her go," Trina said calmly. "You don't want to make this worse for yourself." "Shut up! Put your weapon down, now!" Trina carefully lowered her Glock to the floor. As she straightened up, her hand brushed the smoke grenade on her belt. In one fluid motion, she pulled the pin and rolled it toward them. Dense white smoke erupted between them. The guard instinctively loosened his grip on the girl. That split second was all Trina needed. She surged forward as the girl broke free, tackling the guard before he could aim. They crashed into a metal table. His pistol skittered away across the floor. The guard was bigger, but Trina had years of combat training. She blocked his wild punch and countered with sharp elbow strikes to his face. When he tried to grapple, she used his momentum against him, sweeping his legs and taking him down hard. A quick armbar hyperextended his elbow until something popped. His scream cut off as she choked him unconscious. "Are you hurt?" Trina asked the girl, who huddled against a wall. No, she stammered. "There are others. In the freezer." "Show me." The girl led her to a massive walk-in cold storage unit. The heavy door was secured with a padlock. Trina shot it off and pulled the door open. The blast of frigid air carried the sounds of whimpering and quiet sobs. 12 girls huddled together on the frozen floor, dressed in thin clothes. The youngest couldn't have been more than 10. Their eyes were wide with terror as Trina entered. "I'm FBI," she said softly, showing her badge. "I'm getting you all out of here. Can you walk?" They nodded, helping each other stand on trembling legs. Trina guided them through the smoke-filled corridors toward the loading dock where her truck waited. The trailer was equipped with emergency supplies: blankets, water, food, and first aid kits. "Stay quiet and stay together," she instructed as she helped them climb inside. "Lock this from the inside. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll knock 3 times. Pause, then twice more. Understand?" They nodded, wrapping themselves in blankets. Trina secured the trailer and headed back inside. On a security monitor near the loading dock, she spotted Faulkner in what looked like a central office, barking orders into a radio. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from multiple directions. 4 men in tactical gear appeared at both ends of the corridor, rifles raised. Trina dove behind a concrete pillar as bullets chipped away at the edges. "You're dead, Fed!" one shouted. "No way out!" Trina touched her wounded side, feeling fresh blood. She'd lost too much already. But giving up wasn't an option. She pulled her last smoke grenade and threw it, using the cover to sprint toward a side passage. A rifle stock swung at her head. She ducked, grabbing the weapon and driving her knee into the attacker's groin. As he doubled over, she wrenched the rifle away and slammed the butt into his face. He went down hard. The second man charged, trying to tackle her. Trina sidestepped, using his momentum to throw him into a wall. His head crashed through a rusted pipe, releasing a spray of pressurized steam. He screamed, clutching his scalded face. More bullets forced her into a roll. Pain exploded in her leg as a round grazed her thigh. She came up firing, catching the third attacker in the shoulder. He dropped his weapon, stumbling backward. The fourth man had a clear shot. Trina threw herself sideways as his rifle barked. The bullet missed her head by inches. She crashed through a rotting drywall partition, buying precious seconds. Her hands found a length of broken pipe. When he stepped through the hole after her, she swung it like a baseball bat, connecting with his temple. He crumpled, without a sound. Steam continued spraying from the ruptured pipe, filling the corridor with scalding mist. Somewhere in the distance, flames began to lick at exposed insulation. The fire would spread quickly through the old building. Gritting her teeth against the pain in her leg, Trina checked her weapon and started limping toward the central office. Each step sent fresh agony through her thigh, but she pressed on. Faulkner was waiting up ahead. It was time to finish this. The command office loomed ahead, its grimy windows flickering with fluorescent light. Trina pressed her back against the wall beside the door, steadying her breathing. Her leg throbbed where the bullet had grazed her, and fresh blood trickled down her side. She tightened her grip on her Glock and kicked the door open. "Don't move!" she commanded, sweeping her weapon across the room. Faulkner stood behind a metal desk, his arm locked around a young girl's throat. A hunting knife pressed against her skin. The girl couldn't have been more than 14, tears streaming down her face. Well, The fed bitch found her way upstairs. Faulkner's drawl dripped with contempt. His uniform was splattered with blood. Not his own. Drop the gun, or I open her throat. You're surrounded, Faulkner. FBI tactical teams are already in position. Trina kept her voice steady, despite the burning in her wounds. It's over. He laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the metal walls. You government garbage think you're so smart. Always playing by the rules, filling out your little forms. The knife pressed deeper, drawing a whimper from the girl. But I own this county. Have for years. Let her go. This is between us now. Between us? His face twisted with rage. You have no idea what you've walked into. Your precious Agent Monroe found out the hard way. Wrapped his car around a tree about 6 hours ago. Trina's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone, if you can find it. But I'm guessing you won't be getting any calls from Arthur anymore. Faulkner's grin widened. See? I've got friends in places you can't touch. People who make sure problems like you disappear. Big talk from a small-town cop hiding behind a child. Small town? He pressed the blade harder, drawing a thin line of blood. I run more product through this route than you'll see in your whole career. Girls, drugs, weapons, whatever pays. And no fed above my pay grade will touch me. Trina's eyes darted to a metal cup on the desk near Faulkner's right hand. In one fluid motion, she fired at it. The cup exploded, spraying hot coffee across his face. He jerked back instinctively, loosening his grip on the girl. Run! Trina shouted. The girl twisted free and bolted for the door. Trina's second shot caught Faulkner in the shoulder, spinning him against the wall. But instead of going down, he launched himself across the desk with surprising speed. His tackle drove them both to the floor. The gun skittered away as they crashed into a filing cabinet. Faulkner's fist connected with Trina's wounded side, sending waves of agony through her body. She countered with an elbow strike to his throat, but he barely seemed to feel it. I'm gonna enjoy this, he growled, wrapping his hands around her neck. Trina bucked and thrashed, but his weight pinned her down. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision as his thumbs dug into her windpipe. She clawed at his face, but he just squeezed harder. Her hand found a loose piece of metal on the floor, part of a broken chair. She swung it desperately, catching him in the temple. His grip loosened for a split second. That was all she needed. Trina drove her thumb deep into his eye socket. Faulkner screamed, rearing back. She planted her foot against his chest and kicked hard, sending him stumbling backward. Before he could recover, she tackled him into a support beam. His head cracked against the steel with a sickening thud. They grappled on the floor, trading savage blows. Faulkner fought like a cornered animal, all technique abandoned in favor of raw brutality. He caught her with a wild punch that split her lip. She answered by driving her knee into his groin. Rolling away from another grab attempt, Trina snatched up her dropped handcuffs. When Faulkner lunged again, she caught his arm and used his momentum to flip him. The cuffs snapped around his wrist before he could pull free. You're finished, she panted, securing the other cuff to an exposed furnace pipe. You stupid by... His words cut off as she slammed his head against the pipe. Shut up. Trina wiped blood from her mouth and activated the body camera clipped to her vest. The red light blinked, indicating it was streaming live. Faulkner thrashed against the cuffs, spitting curses. His eye was swollen shut where she'd gouged it, and blood ran down his face from a gash on his forehead. Trina looked directly into the camera lens. Her voice was raw, but unwavering. This is who your heroes really are. In the distance, police sirens began to wail. Orange flames reflected off the office windows as the fire spread through the lower levels of the plant. Smoke curled under the door, growing thicker by the second. "You hear those sirens, Faulkner?" Trina's words carried clearly on the video feed. "That's the sound of your empire burning down. Every trafficking route, every dirty cop, every piece of evidence you tried to bury, it's all coming to light." He lunged at her again, the cuffs clanking against the pipe. "I'll kill you for this." "No." She stood over him, eyes hard. "You'll rot in a federal prison, knowing a black female agent brought down your whole operation. And that's going to hurt worse than anything I could do to you." The sirens grew louder, multiple units converging on the plant. Through the window, emergency lights painted the smoke-filled sky in strobing red and blue. Fire alarms shrieked through the smoke-filled corridors of the meatpacking plant. Trina stood over Faulkner, her body camera still streaming, while emergency lights painted the office in surreal flashes of red. "Those girls you tried to sell?" She pressed her boot against his shoulder, making him wince. "They're going home to their families. But you? You're never seeing daylight again." The building trembled as another explosion rocked the lower levels. Smoke poured through the vents, thick and acrid. Outside, a police helicopter's spotlight swept across the windows, and dozens of voices shouted commands through bullhorns. "FBI! This is a federal operation! All units hold position!" Trina grabbed Faulkner's keys and unlocked the cuffs from the pipe, quickly resecuring them behind his back. "On your feet," she ordered, hauling him up. "We're walking out of here." "You're dead," he snarled through bloody teeth. "You hear me? Dead!" She shoved him toward the door. "Keep talking. The whole country's watching your meltdown live." They emerged into the hallway as state police in tactical gear rushed up the stairs, weapons raised. "Federal agent," Trina called out, holding up her backup badge. "I have 12 victims secured in my truck outside. They need immediate medical attention." "Ma'am, we've got ambulances standing by," one officer responded, training his rifle on Faulkner. "The building's about to go up. We need to evacuate now." Trina pushed Faulkner forward, keeping pressure on his wounded shoulder. The stairwell was filling with smoke, making visibility poor. She could hear the girls coughing in her truck outside, scared voices carrying through broken windows. They reached the ground floor as federal marshals burst through the main entrance. Fire crews attacked the blaze with high-pressure hoses, creating a wall of steam and smoke. Trina's legs trembled from blood loss, but she maintained her grip on Faulkner. "Get those girls out first," she shouted to the rescue teams. "My truck's parked against the north wall." Medics rushed past with stretchers and oxygen tanks. The girls emerged one by one, wrapped in emergency blankets, some barely conscious from the cold of the storage unit. Others clung to each other, sobbing as paramedics guided them to waiting ambulances. Faulkner tried to twist away in the chaos, but Trina drove her knee into the back of his leg. "Don't even think about it," she growled. A familiar voice cut through the noise. "Agent Daniels!" Officer Diaz pushed through the crowd, his face bruised and uniform torn. He clutched a USB drive in his shaking hand. "I got out, picked the lock after Rusk left. I have everything. Deleted footage, phone records, internal communications." Federal agents immediately surrounded him, securing the evidence. Diaz looked at Faulkner with disgust. "I recorded your calls too, Deputy, the ones about Agent Monroe." Faulkner lunged at the young officer, but Trina yanked him back. Two marshals grabbed his arms as news helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights creating a dizzying pattern of shadows and glare. "Agent Daniels," a senior FBI tactical commander approached. "We found Monroe's car. It was staged to look like an accident, but we have tire marks indicating a pit maneuver. This is now classified as a domestic terrorism investigation." Trina nodded, her vision starting to blur. The adrenaline was wearing off, and her wounds screamed for attention. "The girls? Make sure they're safe first. They're being transported to secure medical facilities. the commander assured her. "We have protective details assigned to each one." Federal agents led Faulkner toward an armored transport van. He was still shouting threats, but his voice had taken on a desperate edge. The live stream from Trina's body camera had destroyed any chance of his connections protecting him. Paramedics rushed to Trina's side as her knees buckled. "Multiple GSWs. Severe blood loss," one called out, catching her before she hit the ground. "We need a gurney over here." They eased her onto a stretcher, cutting away her vest to assess her wounds. The pain hit her in waves now, making it hard to focus. Through the haze, she saw Diaz giving his statement to federal investigators, pointing out other officers involved in the conspiracy. The plant's upper floors were fully engulfed now, flames reaching into the night sky. Fire crews fought to contain the blaze as evidence teams rushed to secure what they could from the offices. "BP's dropping," a medic announced, starting an IV. "We need to move her now." As they loaded her into an ambulance, Trina caught one last glimpse of Faulkner being shoved into the transport van. Their eyes met through the smoke. His face had gone slack, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. All his power, his connections, his years of corruption, rendered meaningless by a single live stream. The medics closed the ambulance doors, shutting out the chaos. Trina let her head fall back against the stretcher as they inserted a second IV line. Outside, more sirens approached. State police, FBI evidence response teams, federal prosecutors. The system she'd fought so hard to fix was finally moving, grinding into action with unstoppable momentum. "Hold still, Agent," the medic said, checking her wounds. "You've lost a lot of blood, but we've got you stabilized." Trina nodded weakly, the edges of her vision growing dark. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the red and blue emergency lights reflecting off the ambulance's ceiling, pulsing like a heartbeat in the night. Trina's eyes fluttered open to the steady beep of heart monitors. Sunlight streamed through hospital blinds, casting thin stripes across crisp white sheets. Her body ached, but the sharp pain had dulled to a manageable throb thanks to IV painkillers. A small TV mounted in the corner played CNN at low volume. The headline scrolling across the bottom read, "Breaking, FBI busts major trafficking ring, corrupt police implicated." "Multiple federal indictments handed down this morning," the anchor reported. Deputy Clyde Faulkner and 4 other members of the Morrison County Sheriff's Department faced charges including kidnapping, human trafficking, civil rights violations, and the murder of a federal agent. The screen showed Faulkner being led into the federal courthouse in shackles, his face bruised from their fight. Deputy Rusk followed, head down, shoulders slumped. 3 other deputies Trina recognized from the department walked the same path of shame, all in cuffs. "The entire department has been placed under emergency federal authority," a Justice Department spokesperson announced from a podium. "We have evidence of systematic corruption going back years. This case represents a complete failure of local law enforcement leadership." A nurse entered, checking Trina's vitals. "Good to see you awake, Agent Daniels. You've had quite a few visitors waiting." Before Trina could respond, 2 senior FBI officials walked in. Assistant Director Phillips from D.C. and the special agent in charge of the Kansas City field office. "Agent Daniels," Phillips said, pulling up a chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Trina replied, her voice hoarse. "But I'll live." "We need to debrief you," the SAC said. "But first, you should know. We found the mole." Trina's heart rate picked up slightly. "Inside the bureau?" Phillips nodded grimly. "Senior analyst in our trafficking task force. He was feeding intel to Faulkner's operation for months. That's how they knew to redirect resources away from your surveillance position. Faulkner rolled on him fast once we had him in custody," the SAC added. "Gave up names, dates, payment records, everything." "What about Monroe?" Trina asked quietly. Phillips's face softened. His death won't be in vain. The evidence he gathered, combined with Officer Diaz's recordings and your live stream, it's bulletproof. No deals, no reduced sentences. They're going away for life. As if on cue, the TV showed Officer Diaz being escorted into the federal building, surrounded by U.S. Marshals. The anchor explained he was providing key testimony under witness protection. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Several families were arriving, guided by victim services coordinators. Trina recognized them from the missing persons files, parents of the girls she'd rescued. "We'll continue this later," Phillips said, standing. "You have some visitors who've been waiting to thank you." They left as a woman entered hesitantly. Her eyes were red from crying, but she smiled through tears. "Agent Daniels? I'm Sarah Mitchell. You saved my daughter Emma." Trina remembered Emma, 14 years old, taken from a mall parking lot 3 months ago. One of the girls she'd found in that freezing storage unit. Sarah gripped Trina's hand. "The doctors say she'll recover. She's dehydrated, traumatized, but she's alive. Because of you." "How is she?" Trina asked softly. "Sleeping now. But she told us what you did, how you fought those men, got them all out." Sarah's voice broke. "We thought we'd never see her again." More parents filled the doorway, all with similar stories. Their children stolen, hope fading, then suddenly returned to them. Trina listened to their tearful thanks, but her thoughts kept drifting to Monroe. If she'd been faster, smarter. The TV drew her attention again. Faulkner stood before a federal judge for his bail hearing, shoulders slumped in an orange jumpsuit. "Your Honor, given the defendant's history of violence, intimidation of witnesses, and his extensive criminal network, the government requests detention without bail," the prosecutor argued. "Your Honor, my client has deep ties to the community," Faulkner's lawyer began. The judge cut him off. "I've reviewed the evidence, Counselor, including Agent Daniels's live stream and Officer Diaz's recordings. Your client represents an ongoing danger to society. Bail is denied." Faulkner's face twisted with rage as marshals led him away. The camera followed him until the courthouse doors closed. A doctor entered with fresh bandages. "Time to check those wounds, Agent Daniels." As he worked, Trina watched more coverage unfold. The FBI was conducting raids across 3 states, targeting other members of the trafficking network. Asset seizure teams descended on shell companies and hidden bank accounts. The entire operation was being dismantled piece by piece. "Your sutures are holding well," the doctor said. "But you need rest. No more heroics for a while." Trina nodded absently, her eyes still on the TV. They showed Monroe's photo now, his official FBI portrait in suit and tie. "Killed in the line of duty," the anchor said. "His sacrifice helped expose this criminal enterprise." "Agent Daniels?" A nurse appeared with a phone. "Call from the FBI director's office. They want to discuss your medal ceremony." "Tell them later," Trina said quietly. "I need some time." The nurse nodded and withdrew. Trina watched more parents arriving, heard more tearful reunions in nearby rooms. The pain and guilt over Monroe's death still gnawed at her. But seeing those families, maybe that was the best way to honor his memory, finishing what they'd started, making sure justice was served. The TV showed Faulkner one last time, being led to a prison transport. The man who'd thought himself untouchable, now headed for a supermax cell. His kingdom of corruption had crumbled, exposed to the light of day. The anchor's words summed it up perfectly. A dark chapter in law enforcement history comes to an end. 3 weeks later, Trina stood at the base of the federal courthouse steps, adjusting her crisp FBI dress uniform. News vans clogged the streets, their satellite dishes reaching toward the morning sky. Two distinct crowds had formed, trafficking survivors and their families on one side, supporters of the accused officers on the other, held apart by barricades and federal marshals. "Agent Daniels!" reporters shouted, thrusting microphones forward. "Any comment on today's proceedings?" She walked past them silently, flanked by FBI protective detail. Her wounds had mostly healed, though her ribs still ached when she breathed deeply. The courthouse's heavy doors swung open, revealing the metal detectors and security checkpoints within. Inside the packed courtroom, Trina sat in the front row behind the prosecution table. Faulkner and his co-defendants filed in wearing orange jumpsuits, chains rattling. Deputy Rusk wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, but Faulkner stared directly at Trina, his face a mask of hatred. "All rise," the bailiff called, as Judge Harriet Monroe, no relation to the fallen agent, took the bench. The United States District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri is now in session. The prosecutor's opening statement was devastating. "This case isn't just about corruption," she began. "It's about power and its systematic abuse, about officers sworn to protect, who instead became predators." When Trina took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke clearly, methodically, describing the initial confrontation at the rest stop. The viral video played on screens throughout the courtroom. Faulkner shoving her against the truck, Rusk laughing as they violated her rights. "And what happened after they took you to the station?" the prosecutor asked. "Deputy Faulkner isolated me in a holding cell," Trina testified. "He turned off the air conditioning, cut the lights, said he could make me disappear and no one would know." She recounted her escape through the vents, the shootout in the woods, finding Agent Monroe's body. Her voice remained steady as she described storming the meatpacking plant, freeing the imprisoned girls, and her final confrontation with Faulkner. The defense attorney tried to rattle her on cross-examination. "Isn't it true you violated department policy by acting alone? That you endangered those girls with your reckless actions?" "I followed FBI protocols for compromised operations," Trina replied calmly. "When faced with imminent danger to trafficking victims, agents are authorized to take immediate action." Officer Diaz testified next, his hands shaking slightly as he described years of witnessing abuse and corruption. "There was a code of silence," he explained. "Anyone who spoke up disappeared or had their lives destroyed." Faulkner ran the department like his personal crime syndicate. The prosecution played his secret recordings, deputies discussing payoffs, trafficking routes, ways to cover up misconduct. Rusk slumped lower in his chair with each damning piece of evidence. A teenage girl testified from behind a privacy screen, her voice quavering. "They kept us in that freezing room for days. No food, no blankets. When we cried, they'd hurt us worse." Other survivors followed, each account more horrifying than the last. Financial records revealed a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. Money flowed from trafficking operations through corrupt police departments in Missouri and Illinois. The prosecution connected every dollar to specific crimes: bribes, murders, kidnappings. "This wasn't just a few bad officers," the prosecutor explained. "This was an organized criminal enterprise operating under color of law." During a brief recess, Faulkner tried to stare down a witness in the hallway. Marshals immediately tackled him as he lunged forward, dragging him back to holding. The judge cited him for contempt. The jury received the case at 3 p.m. By 5:30, they had reached verdicts on all counts. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the forewoman stood. On the count of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, guilty. On the count of human trafficking, guilty. On the count of civil rights violations, guilty. On the count of first-degree murder of a federal agent, guilty. The litany continued. Guilty on every charge for every defendant. Rusk began sobbing openly. Two other deputies slumped forward in defeat. Faulkner sat rigidly, jaw clenched, as his empire crumbled. Judge Monroe's voice cut through the murmurs. "Deputy Clyde Faulkner, please rise." He stood slowly, chains clinking. "You have committed crimes that shock the conscience," she began. "You used your badge as a weapon against the vulnerable. You betrayed every principle of law enforcement and basic human decency. The harm you've caused cannot be measured." She paused, fixing him with a steely gaze. "This court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, to be served at ADX Florence Supermax facility. You will spend the rest of your days in a concrete box, forgotten by the world you terrorized." The judge turned to address the other defendants. Rusk received 40 years. The remaining deputies got 30 each. As marshals led them away, survivors and families in the gallery embraced, crying tears of relief and vindication. Trina remained seated, watching Faulkner's back as he shuffled toward prison. His shoulders were slumped now, his arrogance finally broken. The aura of power he'd wielded like a weapon had evaporated, leaving only a common criminal in chains. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. The U.S. Attorney outlined plans to investigate other departments. Survivors' families thanked prosecutors through tears. Protesters from both sides slowly dispersed as the verdicts spread across social media. That evening, the FBI field office auditorium was lit softly, rows of empty seats facing a simple podium. No press allowed, just agents, support staff, and a handful of high-ranking officials. The ceremony was scheduled after hours to avoid media attention. Trina sat in the front row, her dress uniform pressed and perfect. Her hands rested quietly in her lap, fingers occasionally brushing the still tender spots on her ribs. The room filled silently, agents nodding respectfully as they passed. Nobody spoke above a whisper. FBI Director Walsh approached the podium, his silver hair catching the light. "We're here tonight to honor extraordinary service and sacrifice," he began. "The FBI Director's Medal for Distinguished Service is our highest civilian honor. Tonight's recipient exemplifies everything this award represents: courage, dedication, and unwavering commitment to justice." He detailed the operation's statistics. 12 victims rescued, 5 corrupt officers convicted, 3 trafficking networks dismantled, and over $20 million in criminal assets seized. "But numbers don't tell the whole story," he continued. Agent Daniels faced torture, isolation, and near death. She lost her mentor, Agent Monroe, yet she never wavered from her mission to protect the innocent and bring criminals to justice. Trina rose when called, walking steadily to the podium. The medal gleamed gold against dark blue fabric as Director Walsh pinned it to her lapel. The audience stood, applauding. She accepted with a simple nod, no speech needed. Her eyes scanned the crowd, noting the empty chair where Monroe should have been. Outside, camera flashes burst like lightning through the tinted windows. Reporters shouted questions. "Agent Daniels, how does it feel? Any comment on the new oversight legislation? What's next for your career?" She walked past them, face neutral, into a waiting bureau SUV. On the ride home, she watched breaking news on her phone. The Justice Department had announced sweeping reforms: mandatory federal oversight for rural police departments, new anti-trafficking task forces, expanded witness protection programs. The ripples spread quickly. In Tennessee, 3 deputies resigned after Internal Affairs launched an investigation. Mississippi saw 5 officers arrested for similar corruption. A police chief in Arkansas killed himself when evidence emerged linking him to trafficking operations. The blue wall was cracking. At the FBI Academy in Quantico, Officer Miguel Diaz began his training, determined to become the kind of agent who could prevent future Faulkners from rising to power. His classmates treated him with respect. The rookie cop who'd helped break open one of the biggest police corruption cases in recent history. The 12 rescued girls moved through various stages of recovery. Some reunited with families, others entered specialized care programs. Money seized from Faulkner's operation funded their therapy, education, and support services. One of the older girls started a peer support group for trafficking survivors. Early morning found Trina at Arlington National Cemetery, frost coating the gravestones. She knelt at Monroe's marker, removing a small metal disc from her pocket. She'd had her badge number etched into it, along with the words, "You were right. Sometimes the system works." She pressed it into the soft earth beside the headstone. "You taught me to trust the process," she whispered, "to believe in justice, even when it seemed impossible." Birds called softly in the distance as the sun began to rise. Back at her apartment, Trina sat at her desk and opened her laptop. The resignation letter was already drafted, each word carefully chosen. She'd revised it dozens of times over the past week, but the core message remained the same. Dear Director Walsh, I tender my resignation from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, effective immediately. The Bureau gave me the tools and training to fight injustice, and for that, I will always be grateful. However, I've come to realize that my most effective work happens outside institutional boundaries. The system can work, as recent events have shown, but it works too slowly for those in immediate danger. While the Bureau processes warrants and navigates jurisdictions, victims suffer. I intend to keep fighting, just not from behind a desk. Please accept my badge and credentials with thanks for the opportunities I've been given. Respectfully, Special Agent Trina Daniels. She printed the letter, signed it with steady hands. Her badge and ID card sat ready in an envelope. Tomorrow she would hand-deliver them to the director's office, then walk away from the career she'd built. The media frenzy continued outside her building. Reporters camped on the sidewalk, hoping for a quote or photo. Questions about her next move filled the airwaves, but Trina kept her silence. Let them speculate. She had work to do. Her phone buzzed, a text from Diaz at the academy. First firearms qual tomorrow. Wish me luck. She smiled slightly, typing back. You've got this. Remember, breathe through the trigger pull. On her living room wall, photos of the rescued girls smiled back at her. Not crime scene photos or evidence markers, but new images. Girls in therapy sessions, playing basketball, studying for GEDs, beginning to heal. Their strength reminded her why the fight mattered more than the institution. The setting sun painted her apartment in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow she would start a new chapter, but tonight she allowed herself to rest, knowing she'd kept her promise to Monroe, to never stop until justice was served. 6 months later, the rising sun painted golden streaks across a busy truck stop off Interstate 40. The place hummed with morning activity. Families grabbing breakfast, truckers checking manifests, tourists stretching their legs. A gleaming black semi-truck stood apart from the others, its polished surface reflecting the dawn light. The truck's trailer bore a new logo in silver and blue. Second Chance Recovery and Response, Rescue Operations Division. Below it, in smaller text, Licensed Security Services, Federal Contractor Status B7. Trina Daniels stepped down from the cab, wearing the same style black shirt and tactical pants she'd always favored. Her boots hit the pavement with familiar confidence. The badge on her hip wasn't FBI anymore. It displayed the credentials of her own organization, fully licensed and legally sanctioned to conduct rescue operations. She moved to the back of the trailer where 4 other people waited. Miguel Diaz, now a certified field agent, checked communication gear alongside Sarah Chen, a former state prosecutor who'd quit to join Trina's team. 2 other volunteers, both combat veterans with medical training, organized supplies, and tactical equipment. "Morning brief in 5, Trina announced, her voice carrying the same quiet authority it always had. Latest intel just came in. A radio played from a nearby maintenance bay, the morning news filtering through static. Former Deputy Clyde Faulkner's appeal was denied by the Federal Circuit Court yesterday. His life sentence stands. In related developments, 3 more officers connected to his trafficking network were convicted last week in Tennessee. Trina allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction before turning back to her team. The system was working, slowly but surely grinding forward. But she'd learned that justice needed both institutional power and direct action. That's why she'd created this organization. The trailer's interior looked nothing like its exterior. Custom-built compartments housed surveillance equipment, medical supplies, and defensive gear. Everything legally registered and properly licensed. No more working in shadows, now they operated in full daylight with proper authority. "Target location is confirmed," Diaz reported, pointing to a map display. "Local law enforcement is already notified of our contracted status. No jurisdictional issues this time." Sarah added, "Warrants are clean." Judge Franklin signed off personally. "We've got full authority to enter and secure." Trina checked her own equipment. Radio, protective vest, first aid kit. Everything in its place. Everything by the book. The weight felt familiar but different now. This was her operation, her rules, her way of doing things right. A yellow school bus pulled into the lot, stopping briefly. A teenage girl bounded down the steps, wearing a backpack covered in colorful pins. She was one of the 12 they'd rescued from Faulkner's operation. Now she lived with a foster family nearby, attending regular school, rebuilding her life. She spotted Trina and waved enthusiastically. Trina returned the wave, remembering how this same girl had huddled terrified in that meatpacking plant 6 months ago. The transformation still amazed her. What safety and support could do for a wounded soul. "You coming to group tonight?" the girl called out. She attended a survivor support program that Trina's organization helped fund. "Not tonight," Trina answered. "But I'll be there next week. Keep working on that history project." The girl beamed and hurried back onto the bus. Trina watched it pull away, carrying its precious cargo of normal teenage life and second chances. Inside the trailer, her team finished their preparations. Each person knew their role, their responsibilities. No cowboys, no loose cannons, just trained professionals doing necessary work within the law. The radio continued its morning report. Federal oversight programs have now been implemented in 17 rural police departments across 6 states. Officials credit the Faulkner case with exposing systemic weaknesses. Sarah muted it with a grimace. "Still can't believe how deep it went." "That's why we're here," Trina replied. "To make sure it doesn't happen again." Their organization had grown quickly, funded by private donors and government contracts. They provided security for domestic violence shelters, ran extraction operations for trafficking victims, and trained local law enforcement in proper procedures. Everything above board. Everything documented. The morning sun climbed higher as they finished their preparations. Truckers passed by, nodding respectfully at the logo on their trailer. The organization's reputation had spread. They were known as the ones who got things done right. Diaz checked his watch. Time to move. Trina gathered her team for final instructions. Each operation followed strict protocols. Safety first, legal compliance absolute, documentation complete. No corners cut, no rules bent. They'd learned that justice worked best in the open. A message buzzed on Trina's phone. Another thank you from a family they'd helped reunite last week. She tucked the phone away, focusing on the task ahead. The gratitude was nice, but the work itself mattered most. The team loaded up, equipment secured, plans confirmed. Trina climbed into the driver's seat, adjusting mirrors with practiced ease. The engine rumbled to life, powerful and ready. She pulled out onto the highway, sun at her back, law and truth riding with her. The black truck merged smoothly into morning traffic, just another vehicle on the road. But its purpose was clear, its mission vital. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.